What's the square footage, by the way?
Dude, totally freaking called that shiz, dude. I had not seen this yet because Bjorn captured this and I was not there. I was with another rep. That was a baller. What's the trigger to go into price? What's the square footage of your home? F. That was so good. That just gives me chills down my spine. Okay, so we're watching a full sale from Sean. My purpose with this, guys, is I'm going to walk you through my thought process of what he did well and like why the things that he's doing are actually working so that you as team leaders can take away from this. Team leaders, trainers, you can take away bits and pieces of the principles that work while training people. In a different video, I'll get into like training style and things to do while training. We're not training at this point. It's just capturing a sale. I'm going to interact in this video as if I was training him and what I would do to train or to give commentary on kind of what he's doing well and what he could work on. And then you guys can take away from that the principles that are working. Okay, so here we go.
Hey, how's it going? You must be the king of the castle.
Yeah.
So check out, first of all, how he's standing. Fantastic. He looks really relaxed. And that's what you're going to want to train your people to always do is like the first thing you should identify is, do they look relaxed and at home on the doorstep of somebody's home? Okay. Now, a couple of things I would change here that I don't necessarily love. I don't mind that Sean knocks with a backwards hat because the rest of his attire looks fairly professional. And so it kind of in a way softens him out a bit. He's also has a beard. And so that can be perceived as somewhat obviously more masculine than maybe not having a beard. Like I don't grow a very good beard, and so therefore like I would be more masculine. Having the backwards hat kind of softens out the look in a sense. And again, pointing out some principles here, but he's got his polo and he's got pants on, and so that's kind of gives a balance to the professionalism with the casualness of knocking. So I was in the same neighborhood with him the day before. Home values here put us into kind of like middle class, I would say actually like right in the center, middle class home. So not too poor, not too rich. There is no such thing as rich, but when we're knocking homes, we don't want to get too poor, obviously, be cancellations. This is a decent home values. If he was knocking an upper middle class to wealthy, I would say do not have your hat backwards, like put it the other way around, or don't wear a hat at all. You want to be perceived as professional as humanly possible. If you can obtain a tech uniform that's like button up shirt or something to see even be more professional if you're knocking in a wealthy neighborhood, then that's great. But the principle here is like you always want to match the appearance with the level of wealth of the neighborhood if you possibly can. And then when in doubt, be professional enough, but also be yourself in terms of your appearance. Okay, I'm not going to dwell too much longer on that.
I'm Sean. What's your name?
John,
nice to meet you. I manage Moxie Pest.
Okay, so this is also fantastic as well because one of the things that we focused on with Sean the day before in our training was he's very good at building rapport naturally with people, but he also wasn't becoming cognizant or aware on purpose of when he had rapport with people and when he didn't. So as a result of that, and this happens with a lot of sales reps that are very good at naturally building rapport, maybe not so much with your sales reps that tend to be slightly more robotic and process oriented, but he didn't quite understand when he was in rapport with people, even though the majority of the time he would be. So maybe 60 to 70% of the time as I was knocking with him, he would have rapport with someone and we would be able to get pretty far with them. But then the other 30 to 40% of the time, he was not in rapport with them, but because he wasn't cognizant of it, he didn't therefore do more to build rapport with that 30 to 40% of people that if he got into rapport with them, he likely would have sold. And these are the small differences that can take somebody from selling, like right yesterday as of shooting this video, and it's only April, Sean sold 7 and he's had several days like that. You know, he's had a 9-day, 10-day, and that's going to take someone who is at that level and then maybe occasionally having your 3 to 4s a day and turn it into 10 plus a day if you actually focused on that. So this is what we worked on with Sean, is becoming aware of when you have rapport with someone. Because if you're naturally already good at that, or even if you're not, but you become aware of it, then you can use that as this goal-oriented communication tactic. Instead of just checking the box that I gave my intro, instead you turn the first section of your sale into, okay, I need to have rapport with this person. And so what he's doing here, and I don't know if he's doing this consciously based on our training from the day before, but he's actively getting into rapport with this person. You want to stack everything in your favor to get rapport, which is why we taught, use the I really want to know tonality, because that's going to give you the highest likelihood of getting into rapport with someone. But once a rookie is selling 2 to 3 a day, then you really want to focus on, instead of checking boxes, to like start transitioning. Checking boxes meaning like I do my intro, I do a transition, I overcome objections, I get to features and benefits, I get to price, and I close. And you don't really know where the customer's at along the journey. You want to transition it into goal oriented, whereas like I don't move on until I have rapport with the person. And then I don't move on until I find out what they need. fact finding, intelligence gathering. And then I give a credible value set based on what they need. And I continue to ask questions along the way. And then I have to give them price because they have to understand how to make a good decision and balance out the energy and benefits out equation. And then I close and I gauge where they're at in the close instead of trying to, alternative close them, for example. That's a higher level of sales that Sean is really going to be able to achieve here. I'm using this as a chance to riff on some training principles, but as you're a team leader training, it's very important to understand, do my sales reps get when they're in rapport with people? Are they cognizant of that? And then also, where is my sales rep on the journey too, right? So like, these aren't just kind of levels of emotional intelligence that you can just leapfrog to if you don't have the building blocks of being process oriented in the sale or understanding the script. You can't just riff randomly. You'll be capped in your ability to sell well if you do that and you're just trying to only be yourself. Instead, that's why we focus on the building blocks of having to learn the script and understand the sales roadmap first. And then you as a team leader need to gauge, where are all of my reps individually at in that process of being process oriented and checking the boxes? Do they even know what words to say? And now can they say them in their own personality? Are they good enough and aware enough to just make sure they check all the boxes on every doorstep so that they have the highest likelihood of selling them? And then if they are, they're probably selling 3 to 4 a day minimum, if not more. And they're knocking all the doors, they're working hard. Great. If your sales rep is already there, then now you start working with them on, okay, cool. That was a necessary part of our progression and stepping stones. Now let's get into your ability to gauge, is the customer on the journey with you? Instead of just checking these boxes of I do my intro, I give features and benefits, whatever. Now we're going to say like, all right, if my sales rep's good at that already, and I can rely on the fact that he's actually working and, and he has a good attitude. And then guys, if he's not selling zero, he or she, if they're not selling more 2 a day, then I promise you they're not working the full hours. They're not knocking all the doors, or they have a bad attitude, or both. So don't let people convince you otherwise. But now then you can transition with them once they've got those things under their belt and you can trust that they're doing them well. You can start to say, okay, cool. Now we need to view the sale as a roadmap that you are taking the customer through with you and guiding them along the way, and that you can't move on to the next checkpoint in the roadmap until you've passed the checkpoint with them. Okay, you can't leave them behind. Again, using this to kind of riff on some training principles here.
And so we're stopping by. I'm already treating, do you know Sabrina? So I'm taking care of her house. She has 5 dogs and 5 cats.
And he's in his normal register of voice. This is fantastic. So I'm not even going to focus on that with him whatsoever because he's in his normal register of voice. So it's not useful to really go deeper into that principle. But if a rep was selling and he was out of his register, then we'd talk about that. But also just pay attention to his body language. It's very natural. He's actually pointing at someone. He's actually pointing at a customer who lives down the street, and he's actually using their name. We don't want to dishonestly do the opposite of that, use fake customers or say neighbors and they're not really neighbors, that sort of thing.
She has all the dogs. I'm taking care of her, about 4 others tomorrow. Mainly because of the fleas, because of stray cats.
Now notice, and again, this is maybe a little more high level, but notice how Sean is referencing real things about the neighborhood. So like when we were knocking together, I saw a cat that was not the neighbor's cat, run through the yard. And so he's saying things like, there's cats in the neighborhood that don't belong to people, or we don't know who they belong to. So he's going to reference that. It's like, and then he's also saying, the neighbor who so-and-so who has the dogs. A real expert would be saying those types of things because they would know who their customers are, and they would know details about their customers if in fact they cared about them, which we do, right? And so again, as you're coaching your reps, this is maybe not a rookie coaching session, but as you're coaching reps that are ready for that next level, like focus on these little details of like how you can add layers on to their sales expertise, and they make a huge difference.
Ants and the wasps. If I can squeeze you in, I'm doing it extremely cheap.
I haven't really seen any.
She wasn't seeing much too.
Now, what's interesting right here is like he kind of doesn't put a ton of effort into saying it. Like he's not really building into this hook, because my sense is, and listening and watching, he's already gauging that this person's probably going to give him objection, which is fine. If you feel that you have rapport with a person and you can teach this to your sales reps, and then you want to go harder into this hook. But I'm just assuming that the reason why he's not is because he can tell this objection is already coming, and so he's kind of prepared for it.
Too. The one thing that she really liked is because instead of spraying the base of the home, a lot of companies just spray the base. I actually start all the way at the front curb and I treat the full yard to the back fence. That's important in pest control, especially because I don't spray the yard. I use a granulation, looks like sand. And so you have sprinklers. So when I spread it all throughout the yard.
This is a great training point. So half of what he's doing is kind of talking at the person, And the other half of what he's doing is talking with them. And so there's kind of this mix. And we want to start getting to the place where our reps are talking with people all the time. Again, I kind of recognize the necessary evil of talking at people. If your sales rep is in the stage of needing to learn the scripting process and all of that, but when they're on the doors though, like we should really get to the place where we're always teaching the reps to talk with people. Now, why am I saying that he's talking at them half the time? Well, because if he had rapport with this person, which it feels like he did at least enough, and they were willing to shake his hand, then the next stage of checkpoint that we need to go through is understanding what the customer might need. And you can do a hybrid version of this where you give features and benefits while asking questions, which is kind of what he's doing. But like, we don't really know that this customer cares about the yard, for example. In fact, if you gauge this, that they don't actually really care about their yard a ton, and maybe we shouldn't even be knocking this house, but like from what we gauged, like the home values were great in this neighborhood, so that's totally fine. We don't really know that that's going to be valuable to them. We only know that maybe for like a large majority of the neighborhood, they might care about the fact that there could be ticks and fleas because of a stray cat or something. So my point with this is if I was going to really hyper critique this, and as you are training, looking at like what could Sean need to get to the next level, I would start asking more questions here to understand what the customer really truly needs and what their situation is, more than just do they have another company. I would start trying to understand like, okay, do you mind me asking like, why did you sign up with this company? Why did you end up going with them and not someone else? Like, I'm really curious because I found that a lot of people are upgrading to us, and I don't really want this to be something that you upgrade to me if there's not a really compelling reason, even though many others have. And you might think, this is me now stepping aside from this little role play I'm doing. You might think I'm 8-miling the customer. I'm not. I'm actually trying to understand what they need. That's what I would tell Sean to do here. If in fact, after the training session was over, I found that that would be the biggest thing he needs to get to the next level. But maybe as we go through this training session, we realize that Sean actually needs something else to get to the next level. And this is one minute detail of his sales pitch that we don't really want to focus on right now because there's something else that would have a higher leverage return on action if we told him to do it. I'm just pointing out all these things in their details so that you can understand like how to view and critique. And so if I was training here and I was on the doorstep with him, in my mind, I would be processing like, okay, he could do this, he could do that, he could do that, and I'd take notes. And then after, I would just watch. Is this just kind of a one-off thing and he normally does really find out what the customer needs? Or does he do this in fact on every door? And this is very much the next step that he needs to get better.
Instead of sitting on top, it actually goes past the grass into the soil.
So he's doing a great job at describing what we do, but again, like there's just this missing piece right here that would actually make it, and I know he actually gets the sale, which is great, right? Because this just shows you don't even have to do anything perfectly to sell 3, 5, 7 a day, and that's a very real truth. What I'm getting at is there's just a missing piece that like he would just be selling like freaking bonkers, like crazy if he was able to go from quickly getting into rapport with someone as fast as humanly possible within your frame of reference context as an expert, and then like understanding what they need while you start explaining what we do that could benefit them.
And then you turn the sprinklers on, it goes a foot deep, so it's water activated. Okay. So that way we're getting any ant mounds or any red ants and preventing them.
I would not be teaching a rookie how to explain the service this thoroughly because they're likely not good enough at building rapport or staying within rapport or being confident enough that they could get away with that. But Sean is so confident that he can explain thoroughly, and it's actually now more beneficial that he does versus kind of breezing over features and benefits like we might teach a rookie how to do in his first, couple weeks just to get the script down.
From popping up in the summer while keeping the animals safe.
My only issue is I just had to have my roof replaced.
Oh man.
I had to get a new fridge, new stove.
Okay.
And so
I like the fact that Sean's very much listening to him here. And even look at his body language, you can tell that he's very much engaged, trying to understand and process what the customer is saying. Now, some people will view this when we teach like active listening, they view it as a tactic. Oh, okay, I need to make the customer feel that I'm listening. And that's maybe partially what we want, but if you just actually listen to the customer and just actually process what they're saying, and then kind of attempt to show them that you understand, like the end result will be that you are actively listening to them. Otherwise, you end up taking this weird backdoor approach to sales where everything is a tactic rather than just actually caring about the customer and being able to, in a skillful way, represent that you care about the customer because you do.
I don't see that being in my budget.
Yeah, you're spending a lot of money. I totally get that.
This is fantastic because he's iterating what the customer just told him that he understands. If I were Sean here, and again, this is a very like hypercritical point, and so I don't even know if I would share this with him on the doors if I was in a training situation with him, but if I'm his team leader and I'm watching this and I end up wanting to share this point of feedback, what I would say is if you really want the customer to fall deeper into rapport with you, try to capture the feeling of what they said as the objection and repeat back to them not the exact words as if you were negotiating with tariffs terrorists like Chris Voss says, but rather repeat back to them the captured feeling of what they said. So if the guy says like, I just paid for a roof, man, I'd probably say exactly what Sean did, except for I would just wait and see if he kept conversing with me. So it's like, dude, you just spent a lot of money. That sounds like a tough deal. And like, it's unfortunate that your roof, everyone hates those big expenses, right? And then you just wait until he's going to keep talking to you. And then you reiterate it again. And then you'd be like, listen, dude, I get it. I understand. And I don't want to push this on you if it's not financially in your best interest. So like, I can help you be the judge of that, but I also want you to tell me how you feel. The reason why everybody's been giving me a shot, even notwithstanding the fact that you just paid for a roof, is X, Y, and Z.
The reason I'm here is because
another, again, hypercritical thing is I might tell Sean to go harder on the mystery and intrigue tonality here, because it's a very cool sounding contrast when you go from actively listening and being very intrigued to saying, no, listen, dude, I got to tell you the reason why, and it's like this mystery. It makes your thesis much more powerful when you use the mystery and intrigue tonality to state that thesis. And a lot of reps will view this as like 8-miling, but if I'm ever saying thesis statement or like value building statement that's pre-value, then that's always kind of what everyone refers to as 8-miling, which I don't necessarily like the term 8-miling. It feels kind of manipulative to me, although I'll often use it just because that's what people know that I'm referring to.
For the summer, right? Have you guys had a company before? Or?
No, never.
I love the I really want to know tonality here, obviously.
About 4 years ago.
Okay, nice. And how was the past 4 years? How do you like the neighborhood?
That's cool.
Dude, this is so good. Sean realizes that he needs more information in order to help sell this person. And so then he goes deeper into asking more questions so that he can understand, how can I best serve this person? Like, if they just paid for their roof to get replaced, which insert any money objection here, right? Like, you can apply this to any type of person that is giving you a smoke screen that's money related. And even like in very wealthy neighborhoods, oftentimes they'll give you smoke screens that are money related in that sense, but that aren't actually real because you just don't have rapport enough with them yet, or you don't know their situation enough so they don't therefore trust you. So I love the fact that he's now going into like intel gathering mode, because you can't move on to give the real value that this customer might need unless you first gather the necessary intel.
The neighbors well? No. Oh man, 4 years and
I stay to myself.
you don't have a best friend here? But anyways, I treat the full yard, and then
Do you have a card? Maybe I can.
yeah, I can leave you some info. But the second best thing I do is, have you seen a D. Weber brush before?
This is fantastic. One of the things that is apparent, and I don't know how much this applies to the door-to-door industry as a whole, but it's certainly a common objection that everyone gives. And like kind of an older way that we would teach to respond to the, do you have a card or can you leave me with some info, is to kind of use this pithy one-liner that sounded something like, I'm not the card guy or I'm not the flyer guy. If you're an experienced rep or you're trying to teach experienced reps, it's actually much more helpful to respond as Sean is saying, in the sense that like, yeah, I'm happy to leave you with some information, and then you move on. And then if they say, no, really, dude, can you leave me with a card? Then I would just literally pull a card out and start writing on it and keep talking with them and see if I can build more value or deepen the rapport. You don't want to break trust when someone gives you an objection. So he's handling it perfectly in the sense that like, if someone asks for something, you want to give it to them, if in fact you're going to be honest by doing so. But it doesn't mean you have to necessarily give it to them right away. You can say, yeah, I'm happy to leave you with some information. Now let me just ask you this so really fast. And then now you're into your next thing. And if it was a smokescreen, which in fact this was a smokescreen, they will forget that they asked you that question. But you're also not being dishonest, because you will in fact leave them with information if that's what they want.
So it's just a big brush, extends like 35 feet. I coat it in an organic repellent, and then I take it and I sweep down any wasp nests, mud daubers, and spiders. I'm allergic, so I hate them. But
Very cool interjection there that's vulnerable, that also humanizes you and makes you connect with the customer.
sweep them down, but instead of just knocking them down, I leave the repellent up behind.
And so give like a defense barrier.
Basically, so it blocks the pheromones, so that.
Yeah, now this is really interesting, because if the customers will start finishing your sentences like this, or if they do, you know that you're at a certain place in your roadmap. And let me just explain. So you know that you have rapport and that you've done good intel gathering, and that your value set now is actually applicable to the customer. Because if it weren't, he wouldn't be kind of interestedly finishing your sentence for you, if that makes sense. Now, that doesn't mean that like the only way you know if you have rapport and you've built value well and done the proper intel gathering and that applies to them, that they have to be finishing your sentences. So what I'm trying to point out here is that this is how you can help reps start to become conscious of where they are at in the sales process. Usually very talented sales reps who are in that 300 to 400 sales range, which Sean already is. I mean, he's already proven that he's that level of performance as a rookie the previous summer. If you're already in that range, usually you're what's called unconsciously competent, meaning you're very good at what you do. You're good at the sales game. You've worked really hard, but you're not quite conscious of where the customer is at in the process. You're not quite conscious of why what you're doing actually works versus someone else, right? And so the goal with a sales rep that's in Sean's position is you as the leader need to try to help him see how to become consciously competent, meaning aware of his competencies and aware of where the customer is at as you apply those competencies to the sale. And as you can help reps get consciously competent, then that really helps their game get to a completely new level. It's kind of the thing that makes it the difference between like your 250 to 400 level sales reps to the ones that go like just off the charts and start selling, 500, 700, 1,000 accounts, at least from what I've seen in the personal coaching with those reps.
That way you don't have them just because they're stubborn. They would just go right back up after you break them down.
Also a really interesting kind of NLP thing. I don't know if he's doing this consciously, but if you do things like that as you're saying certain things that you want people to remember, they'll remember them more. It's a very much a neurolinguistic programming thing. That's just a side note, but...
Make sure and leave it along the whole roof line, every single window and door, like even as close as here, so you don't get the spider web buildup or anything. Okay. Does that make sense?
And notice how he's not talking himself out of the sale. I also like that he's checking in with the customer too, because usually if a customer starts favorably interacting with you, a lot of times sales reps will just jump ahead of themselves and be like, oh, they're super interested, and then they'll try to close. Whereas Sean's not doing that. He's being very patient, or they'll either close too early or they'll just talk themselves out of the sale. And Sean's doing a good job at saying, okay, cool, I know that he's actually interested. I can gauge that. I'm going to keep going just to see for sure that he is. And then I'm going to check in saying, does that make sense? And then based on his voluntary response to, does that make sense in the customer's tone, not necessarily the words he says, the customer's tone, that's where you can say like, okay, cool, I've got enough rapport and now I can go into price and then I can close. I'm really interested to see if he goes into price here because I actually haven't watched this yet.
What's the square footage, by the way?
Dude, totally freaking called that shiz, dude. I had not seen this yet because Bjorn captured this and I was not there. I was with another rep. That was a baller. What's the trigger to go into price? What's the square footage of your home? F. That was so good. That just gives me chills down my spine.
75, I think.
Okay, check this out. So I think you'll really like this. What was your name again? I'm sorry.
John Jones.
John Jones.
Yeah.
John Jones?
Not,
like the fighter?
Yeah, not related.
Do you fight too?
Nah, I used to,
But you're a veteran, eh?
Yeah.
Fantastic though, just continue to deepen the rapport, especially if you're about to go into price and the customer's still with you and you can deepen the rapport. That's like, it's amazing. Again, you wouldn't be training a rookie how to do this stuff if they don't have the building blocks yet and they haven't shown proficiency in their ability to understand, memorize the script, apply it in their own personality, and also just do the work, right? Like I wouldn't go train a rookie on how to do this stuff if I wasn't confident that he was knocking 100 doors a day or 200 doors a day. But since Sean has such ambitious goals, every little thing now I want to give him as to build off of his foundation to maximize his ability to go sell and kill it. But really good here so far. Let's see how he does price.
No way. What? Grinch. Okay. Wonderful. How'd you like it?
13 years.
What? That's awesome. I'll call you John Jones then. So.
I also, if I was Sean, I wouldn't quite trust that was the guy's name. And so I think what he's doing here, and correct me if I'm wrong if you're watching this, Sean, I think what Sean's doing here is actually gauging whether or not what he just said was truthful, which simultaneously what you're gauging there is, do I actually have rapport with the person? Because the rule here that we always say, right, and if you've worked with me, you've heard me say this 1,000 times, is that there's one thing you can be certain of. Everyone is lying to you until they trust you. And that doesn't mean overtly lying and being horrible people. They're not like Satan. They just won't give you the actual honest truth. They'll give you smoke screens that aren't actually intellectually honest until they trust you. And why should they, right? So that's, I think, really what he's gauging here. That's certainly what I would gauge if I was in his shoes.
Normally John Jones, for a house of your size.
And he's even being facetious about it, which is amazing. That's like funny.
The best part is I warranty my work. So if you ever see anybody...
Here, what I might do is I might train Sean how to do a sort of a mystery and intrigue going into, listen, dude, the best part. And that's a great time to do that because you're breaking up price with value and you're trying to build up the side of the energy in benefits out equation with value versus cost. You're trying to build that up with a pattern break saying, okay, I just told you that this is going to be expensive, that you're going to expend energy to get this, which is money. But now how do I make it so that I balance out this energy and benefits out equation? And the way we do that is by inserting a piece of value there. And especially if you always want to maximize a thesis statement or a value proposition or a value prefacing phrase, it's always really helpful to do that with the mystery and intrigue tonality. So instead of saying, now listen, the best part, and you're super excited, you might train a guy like Sean, if you're the leader, to do it in like a more calm and kind of like drop his tone down. Say, now listen, dude, best part about all this is that not only do I warranty everything, everybody does that, right? I actually rotate products. Notice how I'm raising my certainty now, right? Because I need the contrast of the mystery and intrigue, the softness of it, and the kind of like veiledness of it to contrast with some more pointed certainty. And if you do that well, they're not going to forget that you just gave them price, but the tonality itself will build value such that the price will become irrelevant, what they have to pay to get it. It's kind of an interesting way to think about that.
Bugs in or out, like these guys, call me and I'll be back for free to treat.
Okay.
Now, since I'm already coming out for Sabrina and a few others, and since
Now here, he's kind of maintaining the same tonality the entire time, or at least the same volume of voice. What I might coach Sean here to do is, and the reason why I go from mystery and intrigue, now listen, the best part is, to like more certainty, we rotate products every season because the bugs will get used to them if you don't do that. Obviousness, right? I mean, I'm talking a bit louder and more animated. Now, the reason why that's important is because what you could practice doing, and you can simulate this in a role play setting, is now when you go into the price drop, dropping your tonality down to scarcity again. I imagine that if you would have done this sale wouldn't be 20 minutes long, it'd be 6 minutes long total. And so instead of saying, now listen, if I can fit you in while my trucks are here, I might say, no, dude, listen, this might not even be the best fit for you, but like if you've even remotely liked what I've said, so I've already got trucks out here, okay? And you're like the third person that I've talked to today. And so not everyone even knows about the deal. And so far of the 3 people I've talked to, you being the third, 2 of them have signed up already. But something along those lines, right? But you can hear my scarcity there. So I might teach Sean how to get really meticulous with practicing, if I'm his leader, right? How to like make that inflection of tonality, the ups and downs of it, the peaks and valleys become so charismatic that the person's just like hooked right away and they're just going to say yes right after you close.
everyone has expenses right now, no one wants to spend a lot of money. What I'm doing is,
now that was great. That was obviousness right now. And nobody wants to spend a lot of money, but listen, dude, my truck's already here. Now you hear me drop it down to scarcity.
off the first one, still for everything, so full yard.
Still for everything, obviousness, right? And that's what you always want to use every time you use that. Like when you say, now it's still for everything, to reiterate the value, you want to say it with the tonality of obviousness. And so now, again, my whole purpose with Sean here, if this is me talking to Sean, I'm trying to help him become conscious of both the things that he could work on, where the customer is at, specifically related to those things that he could work on. But I'm also trying to help him become conscious of the things that he does well, so that he doesn't start to misinterpret when I'm not selling very well, it's because, of something that's irrelevant, that's not actually attributing to him not getting the sales he wants on any given day. This is a game when you're coaching high performers who have the potential to be very high performers. It's a game of helping them become consciously competent and aware of both the things that they do well, and then giving them a hyper awareness of where the customer is at and what they could do in order to get the customer to move along the line of certainty and through the checkpoints that are required to get them to say yes.
Full foundation so nothing creeps in the bottom.
Yeah.
Then I do the full roof line.
And again, he just reiterated price, and so now he's going to kind of balance out the equation there. And there's not one perfect template for giving price to a customer, although we teach rookies a very specific way to do that, and then you close. Like if I'm teaching a rookie here, I'm saying, hey, you got to freaking close right now. But I imagine that Sean is going into more value here because he can gauge with the customer that the customer's not quite ready for the close yet, which is exactly what I'd be doing. And because, you can become more hyper aware, the better you get at sales, obviously, and more emotionally intelligent, which by definition, that is emotional intelligence. So even though this is kind of not perfectly following like a rigid script, it's still going through a checkpoint process in the sense that the customer might not be there with him ready for the close yet. And he's not talking himself out of the sale. He's probably emotionally, intelligently gathering that information.
And then do you use the garage for storage or parking?
Storage.
Okay, do you have any cardboard boxes in there?
And I watched him do this close almost every door. And this is a very interesting one. You engage the customer and like, what's the garage situation? Do you guys have storage in there or do you park the cars there? Now, this is tricky because the day before on a couple of times he used this, I would not have used this close because it feels too personal of a line of questioning if you don't have enough rapport. But if you do have rapport and you're to this place, then this is now relevant as an expert to know what's the garage situation, because I need to know if it's for storage or if you park your cars there or whatever, so that I can tell you how you could best treat the garage and how we will best serve you by treating. But again, this is a little tricky. So like I might not teach this as a template to use for a close. I would just say go into a tritonal close here. It's not horrible if you feel that the person is already there with you in the journey.
So Sabrina,
And that's one of the things I use like home defense.
Okay, so you're doing it yourself.
Yeah, I do it myself.
Dude, I'm glad you're doing at least something, because the wolf spiders, they like to nest in the cardboard boxes.
Yeah. those are pockets.
And so normally the garage is extra, but if you're willing to give me a shot, I'll even throw in the garage for free.
Give me like 3 months, and
Yeah.
then I might be interested.
Okay.
I just gotta
Interesting.
build up some funds back up.
Is it a budget? Yeah, I
it's a
feel you.
budget thing, so.
Cool. So, and then we do a veteran, I didn't say the veteran discount yet. So I understand like budget's tight. You probably spending a crap ton of money.
Yeah,
I mean, the place looks
I'm on
good
a set
so
income.
far.
I'm on a set income.
Okay.
So, I mean, what I got is what I got.
That's awesome. So, I mean, at least it doesn't fluctuate up and down. At least you're relying on it.
Now, I'm not in Sean's head, so I don't quite know here, but like there's a clear difference in his demeanor here. I think he felt like he had the sale, and then now he almost feels a tiny bit dejected in the way he's talking. So this is what I watch sales reps tend to do is they start jumping to like, okay, what are all the things that he said that I could then give, like show that I'm either interested in or give for free to get them to say yes. Like, oh, I remember he's military. So like, oh, do we have a military discount? Or like, I remember that the budget's tight. Or like, oh, I'll give it to you for cheaper. It's like, you don't really want to do that because that starts to show some desperation in the sale and it takes longer to recover from that. So instead, what I would have done here and how I would coach Sean to do this if I was, or like any rep in the situation, if I was their leader, I would say, hey, so it doesn't matter if you thought you were going to get the sale yet. What you need to do is just follow the template of, okay, cool. I need to gauge what about everything that I've said in the sale so far does he like or not like? And how does he actually feel? So this is why the first transition after you give price and close the first time, and this would be very good if he had already just closed and said, listen, all I'm asking, dude, I understand, this might not be a good fit now, but all I'm asking, give me a shot while my trucks are here. Let me prove it to you that this is going to be the best thing that you've done for your home. I know you treat for yourself. That's fine. If it's even half as good as what everybody else is experiencing, you're going to be super impressed. Does that sound fair? Now, if you did that, that's 100 times better close than like, not 100, maybe 10 times better close than anything else you could do. But what it does is it moves you further down the line to say like, okay, I don't need them to say yes there because this close does two things. If they're ready to buy, they're going to buy right here. They're going to say, yes, all right, let's do it. If they're not, it's going to draw out in a very real way, like, why are they not buying yet? So that's what I might coach Sean how to do in this very situation, because then the first objection cycle after price, so he now gives this objection, says, hey, can I just do this in a couple months when I really might need it? Instead of saying, oh, I forgot to mention we've got a discount, or I forgot to mention, thank you for your service or whatever. Instead, I'll say, yeah, that's totally fine, John. Let me just ask you, like, literally based on everything that I've said, because what's the first objection handling situation after price? The first transition is, do you like the idea? Does it make sense, right? Or you gauge where they're at. So how I'm going to do that is say, now, John, based on everything that I've said, like, does it all make sense? And are you intrigued enough in my service to at least give it a shot down the road? Potentially. I'm not like trying to get away from having to hard close here and shying away from a close. What I'm doing is I'm trying to notice how I use a hypothetical tonality, trying to understand what this person how he actually feels about everything that I've said. And so likely what John would respond with is, and how most people do is like, yeah, I mean, it sounds great. Like I definitely would go with it down the road. Like I said, 3 months, right? So they might reiterate the objection. Now, what happens there is I don't need him to say yes. I'm not trying to get him to say yes right now. I'm just trying to understand the level of certainty with which he responded, right? And again, if my training purposes here for Sean are to help him become hyper conscious of and aware of where he's at and where the customer is, that's what I'm going to teach him how to do is be like, now just gauge his tone here. Okay. How does he say it? Well, it's like, yeah, maybe I might go with it. Like I said, 3 months, just leave me with the card. And then instead, I wouldn't let him off the hook though, because he's still giving me a smoke screen. Remember, we're not checking boxes. We're goal oriented and we have to take the customer through the roadmap and through the checkpoints with us. So we're not through this checkpoint of where are you at yet. Like we're not through the checkpoint here of like, how do you feel about this actually? Because I don't really quite know. I just know his level of certainty when he responds. Again, he didn't, John didn't do this in the actual sale. I'm kind of role playing the scenario. Then what I would say is like, no, okay, so that's fine, John, but, and again, take your time, but what about what I said did you like? Like what stands out to you the most? Like of everything that I've said so far, what's the most meaningful to you specifically? Because that's what I would care about most if you're ever going to be one of my customers. Now, dude, if you say that already, what am I doing? I'm deepening rapport with the person because they can start to feel that I actually do care. No one asks that type of question if they don't actually care, unless they're really good at manipulating people. But I'm assuming that that's not what we are. From there, then the customer might say, actually the thing that I like the most is like, you didn't talk about this much, but like you mentioned the thing with the weep holes, or you mentioned the thing about the wasp. We got a really big wasp problem. And I kind of worried about it because I also have a daughter who she's allergic to wasps. It's like, okay, now I know what he actually liked about what I said. So now I've got that gauge. I'm with them now going through this checkpoint, the customer, right? If you imagine the sale as a checkpoint, the most emotionally intelligent version of a sales rep is going to take people through those checkpoints with him. Now I can transition and say, now listen, John, that's not even the best part. All right. The real beauty about my service is this this and this. I'll match the customer in their tone of voice, and then I'll raise my level of certainty to bring them with me. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so we've got 15 more minutes of the sale that we could watch. I'm going to do the rest of the analysis at a different time, because everything that we've talked about so far, if you went and meticulously applied the principles that we've talked about here, and especially if you're a team leader training people how to do this, you will get people to sell like crazy if they actually apply these things. And if you can build into your processes as a leader a system to ensure that they start really doing these things tactically within their sales process. So thanks for watching this, guys. Again, we'll do more analysis on this later, but like alone, if you actually did this and people actually applied what you were teaching them, you know, coaching your reps in this way. And again, this is for reps that are not just necessarily rookies starting out, but like already have some experience under their belt. They'll start selling like crazy, like 10 a day minimum. And they'll do it in a way that's very principle centered, where they're actually caring about customers, and they'll sell the best types of customers, which are people that are low maintenance. Perhaps they're loyal to their services, but they really like having services on their home where people are treating because they're experts and because they care. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you guys in the next video.